All right, welcome to Hoops Tonight here at The Volume. Happy Monday, everybody. Hope all of you guys had an incredible weekend. Got a jam-packed show for you guys today. We had an incredible night in the NBA again yesterday. This has been a very entertaining start to the NBA season. A lot of nights like last night with a bunch of highly entertaining games. We're going to be breaking down 3 games from last night's slate. The Houston Rockets winning an overtime epic showdown against the Orlando Magic. After that, the Boston Celtics got a big win against the Los Angeles Clippers that James Harden almost stole with a late display of shot making. Going to talk about some specific things that the Celtics cleaned up in that game. And then the Atlanta Hawks come back from down 21 points in Phoenix against the Suns to win their 5th straight game. So we're going to be breaking those games down from last night's slate. And then, like we usually do on Mondays, we'll have our weekly power rankings at the tail end of the show, going quickly through the top 10 teams in the NBA. You guys know the drill. Before we get started, subscribe to the Hoops Tonight YouTube channel so you don't miss any more of our videos. Follow me on Twitter at _JasonLT so you guys don't miss show announcements. Don't forget about our podcast feed, wherever you get your podcasts under Hoops Tonight. It's also super helpful if you leave a rating and a review on that front. Jackson's doing incredible work on our social media feeds on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. Make sure you guys follow us there for content throughout the season. And last but not least, if you want to get questions into our Friday mailbags, make sure you drop them in our YouTube comments. Find the full episodes on YouTube. Mailbag, drop your question in there, and we'll get to them on Fridays throughout the remainder of the season. And then our playback streams this week. So I think LeBron might be coming back tomorrow night against the Jazz. We'll see. He did a bunch of 5-on-5 work against the G League South Bay Lakers over the course of the last week. And then allegedly he's practicing today with the team. He's either going to debut tomorrow night against the Jazz or Sunday night against the Jazz. Whichever one of those 2 games LeBron is in, we're going to do for playback. So if he's tomorrow, we're going to go tomorrow. If he sits out tomorrow but plays Sunday, we'll do LeBron's debut on Sunday. The second playback stream this week is going to be on Friday night, what should be a highly entertaining showdown between 2 of the teams that have clearly looked to be in the top tier to start the season, the Denver Nuggets and the Houston Rockets. So for sure Friday for Nuggets Rockets on playback, watch along, and then whenever LeBron comes back, whether that's Tuesday against the Jazz or Sunday against the Jazz. So this has been an incredibly entertaining start to the season. I was thinking about it when I was watching the Rockets Magic game last night. The one thing that this season has been missing is just a little bit more intrigue surrounding the eventual champion. Like, we came into the season thinking like it's just Denver and Oklahoma City, right? And Denver, Oklahoma City have both looked fantastic to start the year. The Thunder getting 2 absolutely dominant, show-stopping wins against the Lakers and Warriors last week. Denver continuing their win streak, going on the road to Minnesota and dominating a Wolves team that has caused them problems over the course of the last few years. Those 2 teams still look very much like the 2 best teams in the league, but teams like Houston coming in and providing that actual feeling of another threat has been huge. And I'd argue we still need another 1 or 2 of those teams. I don't know if Detroit ends up being that type of team, but us building a little bit more intrigue surrounding the eventual champion, us genuinely believing that there's 4 or 5 teams that have a shot to win this thing is what will get us to really be cooking with gas. But the actual basketball itself, incredibly entertaining to start the season. If OKC wins again, that's fine. But we need to actually believe they can lose. Otherwise, it could feel kind of pointless. So I'm glad to see some of these other teams playing extremely high-level basketball to start the year to continue to build that intrigue around the eventual champion. All right, we're going to be breaking down those 3 games from last night. Let's start with Houston. The Magic actually controlled this one throughout. They played really good defense. They forced Houston into a lot of turnovers and did some damage in transition. Desmond Bane and Franz Wagner were both really good throughout, but Houston makes it a run in the 4th quarter, and we ended up with a really fun half-court battle between Franz and Desmond Bane and Kevin Durant and Alperen Sengun. And the Magic did some damage there. Desmond Bane was attacking Jabari Smith in switches and was doing some damage. They got obviously out in transition off of some of Houston's mistakes. But Houston looked terrifying down the stretch of that game. It got a little trickier than it needed to be because there was this crazy possession late in the game where it was tied and Houston had a chance to go win it. And Kevin Durant basically like trips and falls over himself, which leads to a turnover, run out, Anthony Black, 2-handed dunk that actually put Orlando up by 2 with less than 2 seconds left. So it got tougher for Houston than it needed to be. But Ime Udoka drew up a beautiful sideline out of bounds play that tied the game and sent it to overtime. It got Sengun a really deep post catch versus Jonathan Isaac, where he was able to just catch and immediately turn over his left shoulder and shoot that little patented hook shot of his to tie the game and send it to OT. And it was a very interesting kind of play design because essentially Jabari and Sengun like go down to set a screen for Kevin Durant right underneath the basket so that Kevin Durant can come off towards the basketball in the left corner. And on the same sequence, you see Jabari Smith run through to the right corner after kind of fake setting a screen there. And so basically KD goes to the left corner, Jabari goes to the right corner, Sengun sits right under the basket. And so in that like 3-man action, Orlando essentially decides to switch everything, which they should do. It's a smart way to make sure you don't leave somebody wide open in a situation like that. But when Jonathan Isaac switched on to Alperen Sengun, he was behind him. He was underneath the basket. And so even though all those switches were executed well by Orlando, Alperen just basically had to turn around and he was right there, right underneath the basket for the easy post entry. Beautiful entry pass too from Amen Thompson. Not an easy pass to make from the high sideline all the way right underneath the basket. Got it there on a line, hit him right in the hand so he can go up and finish. So like effectively, Ime Udoka drew up the play so that Sengun could basically walk down like he's setting a screen and essentially use that screen setting as a means with which to get deep post position and quick finish over that left shoulder. But throughout crunch time, including in overtime where the Rockets took control, the Rockets looked absolutely fantastic on offense again. And once again, in large part because of how good their top 2 players are. We saw it all down the stretch. The Rockets were spamming that KD Sengun 2-man game with Sengun screening for KD out on the perimeter. That's become their crunch time staple, and I don't blame them because they continue to get great stuff every single time. There was a possession in overtime where they both kind of lingered on KD for a second. That left Sengun open in the short roll. Easy little short roll read as Amen Thompson's man steps up. Amen Thompson cuts along the baseline, drops it off, two-handed reverse dunk. That's that tic-tac-toe sequence. We've seen a bunch this year that when you're getting those kinds of sequences, even in crunch time, that just goes to show you how difficult that action is to guard. A lot of switching for Orlando in the 2-man game was KD and Sengun, but this is once again 2 of the very best one-on-one players in basketball. They beat both ends of that switch often down the stretch of this game. Like Kevin Durant gets Wendell Carter Jr. on a switch, and it's boom, left to right crossover, right to left crossover, just breaks Wendell off and hits a pull-up 3 that ties the game late in regulation. Sengun just with his textbook little deep post-ups gets Tristan da Silva off of KD. Now he's on Sengun's back, and he just backs him down. Little right shoulder, left-handed hook that is an easy shot for Sengun, right? He gets Bane on a switch on one of the possessions, backs him down, and hits a little hook shot over the top of him and draws a foul. Like the 2 of those guys were just destroying in their 2-man game with every possible sequence. 2 on the ball, Sengun short roll, drop off to Amen Thompson dunk. Switch, KD beats the big. Switch, Sengun beats the small. Look, just unbelievable one-on-one play from those 2 guys. And then the play that iced the game in overtime, KD was like, we're not messing around with this. I don't want any sort of double team coming my way. I think I can get a bucket on Tristan da Silva. He waves Alperen Sengun off. He waves Amen Thompson off. Just goes one-on-one, gets to his spot in the mid-range, hits that little short jump shot, and ends the game. And by the way, both of those dudes, KD and Sengun, were awesome on defense in crunch time. KD had a big ISO stop on Franz Wagner where he forced him into a bad pull-up 3 that he missed. Sengun, right at the end of regulation, that huge block on Desmond Bane that ended up where he blocked it and went out of bounds on Bane, and they ended up having to review it, but it got overturned on review, and the ball got given back to Houston. Those 2 guys were just awesome. And I left that game with continued momentum behind an idea that I've consistently felt when I've watched the Rockets this year, which is that this is one of the very best duos in the NBA. Are either of Kevin or Alperen as good as Shea or Luka or Giannis or Jokic individually? No. But they're both just barely below that tier. They're both right there. And this isn't LeBron and AD in the late stage Lakers where they're surrounded by flawed players. These guys are surrounded by an immense depth of talented, big, and athletic two-way role players. They're also super complementary with each other. Like KD has always provided that go get a bucket ISO over the top type of offense, but there's a little bit of variance with that. He's typically struggled with pressuring the rim with physicality, right? Well, that's what Sengun brings to the table. They're perfect complements to each other. There's like an aura with them too. I was watching both of them last night, and it's like these are just two bad MFers, and they are going to be a huge pain in the ass for anybody to deal with in a playoff series. And there's a lot of momentum building for me as I watch them this year on just how good Kevin Durant and Alperen Sengun are and how that represents a legitimate threat in the Western Conference. And again, like we talked about earlier, I talked before the season, Denver and OKC, the clear top threats. Houston, I viewed in that tier until the Fred VanVleet injury. I was curious to see how it would look this year without those guys, or without him in particular. And they've just looked awesome. And now it's looking like Houston is one of those teams in that top tier. And we need one or two more of those teams to add some real intrigue to start the season. Houston's been incredible. Houston is now 9-1 in their last 10 games. And remember, their 2 losses to start the year both basically came down to one play. They could easily be 11-1 right now. They're first in offense, 8th in defense. Defensive rebounding was an issue for them early in the season, but they've cleaned that up a bit. They're 10th in defensive rebounding percentage in that 10-game span. Still grabbing a preposterous 41% of their own misses. Sengun had a rep last night in overtime where he got his own offensive rebound like 3 straight times on the left side of the basket, and then finished it off with a behind-the-back pass to Steven Adams for a layup. Just a ridiculous highlight and a representation of how physically imposing this team is. And they still continue to just shoot the damn seams off the basketball, which was a big question mark surrounding the team to start the year. They're leading the NBA in three-point percentage at 43% to start the year. Lots and lots of encouraging trends for the Houston Rockets. Boston gets a huge win over the Clippers yesterday in the afternoon, a game they basically controlled throughout. They lost control at various points because their bench units were bad. Anthony Simons had his worst game of the season. He put up a bagel. They were struggling to guard with those units. And then James Harden made it closer than it looked made it look closer than it actually was at the tail end of the game by drawing a foul on a 3 and then hitting a couple of crazy pull-up threes. And actually a really nice play design by Ty Lue on a baseline out of bounds where they heave the ball up the court to the foul line and then pitch it back to Harden, kind of trailing the play. And he actually got a good look at 3 that could have tied the game, just barely left it short. So a couple of weird sequences with the bench unit, and then obviously with James Harden that made it look close. But honestly, the starting group for Boston dominated that game from start to finish. They jumped out the gates early. Jaylen Brown was super athletic on the glass and scrapping for loose balls. The team was very locked in on defense. They were defending James Harden well. Jordan Walsh did a bunch of work on the ball. Derek White did some work on the ball. Peyton Pritchard had 30 in the game and came out guns blazing, was a huge part of how they took control early in the game. And I need a shout out Jaylen Brown here. We talked after their loss to Philly about how I thought he needed to be part of the solution for their defensive rebounding issues. He's one of the best athletes on the team. He was having one of his worst defensive rebounding seasons in recent history for him. He's been excellent. 19 rebounds over the course of the last 2 games. He grabbed 13 rebounds yesterday, was clearly scrapping in a different way from the opening tip. We talked about this in that video the other day, but like he's one of the few guys on that team that actually has the tools necessary to address that flaw for this team. And so him stepping up and taking personal responsibility. I found out after the video too that Jaylen Brown had actually said in the postgame presser that he had essentially taken responsibility for what happened on that final sequence. He also had 33 points yesterday. He's become one of the best mid-range players in the NBA. He's hit 49 pull-up mid-rangers this year at 55%. That's the same amount of volume 49 makes as Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, but on 5% higher from the field. So some really high-level shot making from Jaylen Brown. And we talked about how in the Philly game, that third quarter run from Derek White was a sign that he was starting to gain some momentum and rhythm as a scorer. There's a lot of talk early in the season about how this is what happens when you slide up on the depth chart. Like teams are going to be game planning differently for Derek White. I never bought that just simply because Derek White was still very much a featured ball handler on the Celtics um, before the Tatum injury. Like, I'd argue he was more involved in their pet actions alongside Jason Tatum than even Jaylen Brown was. So, like, I never bought that. I just thought he was playing bad basketball to start the year. Not even, he was struggling a little bit to start the year, which is like something that happens with basketball players sometimes. But following up that Philly game, 42 points in the last two games, 13 for 28 from the field, 7 for 14 from three in the two wins. So a continuation of that momentum for Derek White, starting to look like the Derek White that we've seen in the last couple of years. And most importantly, they won a clutch game. It was a 3-point game with 3 minutes left, and the Celtics just promptly went on a 7-0 run to close the deal. Excellent defense in that stretch from Nimi Queta. He had 2 good drop coverage reps where he forced misses at the basket. He had a play where he was battling Zubats in the block, and he pushed him out with physicality so that when Zoo went for that left shoulder fade, he lost his balance a little bit and was like falling away from the basket and left it very short off the front of the rim. Really good defense from Queta. Then on the other end of the floor, just a little 2-man game with Derek White and Nimi Queta, a little drop off for a layup for Queta, Jordan Walsh transition run out. Derek White then hits the dagger, a little pull-up 3 at the top of the key as his man kind of sagged off just a little bit. Really nice clutch play from the Celtics. Again, a crazy shooting display from James Harden, all good defense. Kind of an iffy 3-point shot foul that could have gone either way, and then he just hit 2 ridiculous step backs. So you got to tip the cap to James Harden. But I actually just thought they played really good crunch time basketball. Really nice response from the Celtics in a couple of key areas where they needed to improve. Their rebounding and their execution in the crunch time situations, and they end up getting a couple of wins out of it. Moving on to Atlanta. How about a 21-point fourth quarter comeback for their 5th straight win, 4 of which have been on the road? They did it with the classic Atlanta Hawks defense to transition attack. We talked about this before the season, but it was very important for my basketball worldview for the Hawks to be good. They had a formula that I believed in. A bunch of super athletic dudes who can guard multiple positions, play passing lanes, force turnovers, run their lanes, and succeed in transition, like generating dunks and threes. And then a lot of guys that are like pretty high IQ dribble, pass, shoot guys. Maybe not the best shooters in the world, but like a group of guys that like can all put the ball on the floor and make plays for their teammates and play drive and kick. And then Trae Young obviously would be the piece that would tie together the half-court offense. Now, we got to take the Trae Young piece and set it aside for now because he's obviously injured. But we're seeing the defense to transition piece and the whole aggregate dribble, shoot, pass, playmaking piece come to fruition here. Like the run against Phoenix was scary to watch. Jalen Johnson, Zachary Rissache, and Dyson Daniels all had steals during that run. Like Jalen Johnson steals a high post entry, run out the other way for a score. Dyson Daniels double teams the high post from behind and pokes the ball away, running the other way for a score. Colin Gillespie's trying to throw a post entry, and Zachary Rissache gets his long ass arm out there and gets a deflection. They're running out the other way for a score. It happened fast, guys. It was a 20-0 run to get them back within 1. Like it was avalanche, steal, run out, score, steal, run out, score, steal, run out, score. But the most impressive part of it is like it slowed down into a half-court game. Like the Suns responded. They Devin Booker and Dylan Brooks got a couple of buckets late, and they actually pushed the lead back to 6 after Atlanta had gotten back to 1. But the Hawks played really good on offense in the half court to end the game. Some brilliant drive and kick sequences. Like guys were hitting gaps and making good kick out reads. They were keeping the ball moving constantly. Really good relocations and cuts. Dyson Daniels and Nickeil Alexander-Walker really led their way with their playmaking during that stretch. Dyson had the 2 biggest assists of the game that actually put the game away. A really nice drive off of the left wing. It was already in a drive and kick sequence, and they were in their kind of flow. And Nickeil Alexander-Walker was in the right dunker spot. And Dyson Daniels caught on the left wing in a drive and kick sequence. He rips the closeout. And right when he rips the closeout, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, again, this is part of that high IQ drive and kick basketball. Nickeil Alexander-Walker had been in the dunker spot where he wasn't a threat. He tees up. He cuts right to the front of the rim, right as Dyson is driving, finds a perfect little window. Dyson shovels it off to him, and Nickeil makes that little floater in the lane. That's super high level drive and kick basketball. They ran a rep of stack pick and roll at the end of the game where Dyson threw a beautiful lob to Onyeka Okongwu, who dunked it in. A bunch of really nice playmaking, drive and kick, like everyone's involved in moving with and without the basketball type of sequences for the Hawks to close that game. They remind me of Toronto a bit, where they don't have like the best catch and shoot talent in the world, but they have a lot of athletes who can pressure the rim and play make out of it. So they're better in the half court than you would think, based on the way their lineups look on paper. And then just a couple of guys shooting the ball better. Jaylen Johnson's shooting the shit out of the ball from three during this win streak. Onyeka Okongwu, he's literally making 41% of his threes on 6.4 attempts per game over the 5-game streak. Like, just a couple of guys shooting the ball better too to help tie off some of those sequences with makes, and they're really starting to play some beautiful basketball. In the 5-game streak, 6th in offense, 4th in defense. They're forcing 19 turnovers per game in that span and scoring 28 points off of turnovers in that 5-game span. That 28 points per game off of turnovers ranks first in the NBA over the last 5 games. They're averaging, as a team, 37 points per game in transition in that span. That's insane. They've had 2 games with over 45 transition points in this span. They are built to win on the margins, and that will win a lot of regular season games in the NBA. Jaylen Johnson in the 5-game streak, 23 points, 12 rebounds, and 9 assists. 60% from the field and 57% from three. Jaylen has always been a very gifted downhill athlete that has been very good at like kind of, I was referring to him to the other day on playback as like Giannis reads, meaning like it's not super high level, like surgical Chris Paul, Luka Doncic type of reads, but what he's very good at is reading cutters along the baseline and simple kick out reads to the 3-point line. And when you pressure the rim the way that he does, those reads are available. That's why I call them the Giannis reads. Like, Giannis has just gotten really good at taking the easy reads that are available when you can pressure the rim the way that he does. That stuff has always been there for Jaylen. The ceiling raiser for him has been the 3-point shot. And if he's going to shoot the basketball like this, that's what allows him to enter into that all-star conversation when he becomes a guy that can average 23 points over a large sample with 9 assists, with real shot creation, with real value on the margins. Again, just really, really high-level basketball from the Hawks. One last note here with them. I know the every time something like this happens, there's a propensity to be like, oh, well, this means that the guy who's injured doesn't matter anymore, right? We've seen this with the Lakers with discussions surrounding LeBron. We've seen this with the Hawks with discussions surrounding Trae Young. You see this around the league, various situations like this guy's out and we're succeeding and that means we don't need him. No. The idea is you want to take the stuff that you've done with this group and you want to add Trae Young to it and you want to see what you can accomplish. I watched the Hawks before Trae Young got hurt this year. It wasn't his fault that the defense sucked. Did he play a role? Sure. But there were a lot of guys in their core lineups, athletes, same guys who were doing damage to the Suns and to other teams during this win streak that weren't playing very well on defense. You want to try to continue this dynamic with the advantage creation and half court kind of grease the wheels type of thing that Trae Young can do. Again, if Trae Young comes back and it feels like you can't recapture the identity, that's one thing. But I personally want to see a larger sample size of Trae Young playing with this group, and I hope they don't do something like trade him before he actually recovers from his injury. Today's show is brought to you by our new presenting sponsor, Hard Rock Bet. It's our favorite time of year. Between the NBA and college, there's basketball on every night. And every night is a shot to score a major bucket on Hard Rock Bet, your home for hoops action all season long. Sign up today and you could score $150 in bonus bets. Just place a $5 bet, and if it hits, you get not only your winnings, but $150 in extra bonus bets. Want to see what everyone else is betting on tonight? Top picks or parlays across any sport? The Hard Rock Bet app literally shows you. It's another reason to download the app, just for the info. Tap Discover, and you can see trending picks and parlays at any time. The Hard Rock Bet Sportsbook app is the only legal sportsbook for whenever you're in Florida, and it's also live in Arizona, Ohio, New Jersey, Indiana, Tennessee, Virginia, Illinois, and Colorado. Coming soon to more states as well. Plus, Hard Rock Bet offers new promos every single day. So whenever you're listening, just open the app and check out what they've got any day of the week. Download the Hard Rock Bet app and make your first deposit. All right, let's get into our power rankings. And again, we're going to be reading our championship odds with each team on this list. All of our lines are presented by Hard Rock Bet. Number 10, heading into this week, the San Antonio Spurs. They are plus 3,000 right now to win the title on Hard Rock Bet. Just 4-4 after their 5-0 start. Lost to some of the better teams. Again, if you look at their 5-0 start, they played a pretty weak schedule. Things have gotten tougher. There's been some good wins in there. I want to be clear. Like that win against Houston was a really nice win, but dropping games to Phoenix, to the Lakers, two games to the Warriors, starting to see some of their flaws come to the surface. Turnover issues are the big one. They are turning it over on 17% of their possessions in that 8-game span, which is the second worst mark in the league over the course of teams over their last 8 games. Back-to-back losses to the Warriors this week that showed a bit of their struggle they have scoring against high IQ defenses, teams that have big physical forwards that they can deploy on Wemby, and also a game plan built around getting the basketball out of his hands. And again, those issues were a continuation of the previous week with what happened with the Lakers and the Suns. In those 4 losses, the Spurs logged just a 113 offensive rating. So first little bit of adversity for this Spurs group to start the year. One silver lining though, after De'Aaron Fox had a disastrous end to the second Warriors game where he kind of co-opted the offense and took some really bad off the dribble jump shots, he responded very nicely against the Kings last night with an efficient 28-11 to get a win in a game where Victor Wembanyama sat out. So nice little sign of building rhythm for De'Aaron Fox. Number 9, the Atlanta Hawks, also plus 3,000 to win the title. We hit them in a segment earlier in today's show. So if you're watching a breakout of our power rankings, make sure you go back to our full episode. We have a segment where we covered the Hawks in more detail, but they've won 5 in a row, top 6 in both offense and defense. They're forcing top 6 in both offense and defense during that 5-game streak, I should say. Forcing 19 turnovers per game, scoring 28 points per game off of those turnovers. Jaylen Johnson's averaging 23, 12, and 9 in their win streak on 60% from the field and 57% from 3. And Onyeka Okongwu blossoming as a spacing big, 41% from 3 on 6.4 attempts per game. Again, if you want more Hawks, you can go a little bit earlier in the episode. Number 8, the Golden State Warriors, currently plus 1,400 to win the title. I'm going to say the same thing about the Warriors that I said about the Lakers after their win against the Bucks on Saturday night on playback. I had a similar kind of line of thinking with them. I think it applies to Golden State as well. It's certainly never a good thing to get your ass handed to you the way that the Thunder did on Tuesday. It's a measuring stick, and it looks like you're not even close, right? So I'm not going to sit here and say that's a good thing. But in many ways, an ass kicking can be good for the soul. It can refocus your group. It can remind them how far they are away from where their goals actually are and motivate them in their daily process to get there. And the Warriors responded to that disaster class with the best 3-game stretch they've had all season. 2 monster wins on the road in San Antonio, 1 resounding team effort in the second half on Wednesday, excellent defense and contributions down the roster, and then honestly just a heroic backpack job by Steph Curry in the Friday night game. They lose that game by double figures if Steph even just plays a normal Steph game. But no, how about 49 points in every big shot and play down the stretch to close the deal? Literally willed his team to victory. There were even a bunch of layups on cuts that they got down the stretch based on attention that Steph got running off of action. He literally willed his team to victory in that game on Friday night. Unbelievable basketball from Steph Curry to start the season. Steph went for 95 points in the 2-game set against San Antonio, just playing some special basketball. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Moses Moody, who carried the offense in the first half of the San Antonio game on Wednesday night and then poured in a career-high 32 last night in New Orleans as some other Warriors had rough nights. He was able to carry the load in the gap there to continue the 3-game winning streak. Number 7, the Cleveland Cavaliers, currently plus 750 to win the title on Hard Rock Bet. It was a rough week for the Cavs, dropping a couple games against the Heat and the Raptors. Lost Darius Garland to re-aggravation of his toe injury. But Kenny Atkinson told reporters the other day that he's considered day-to-day. So I think we can assume that means it wasn't a severe re-injury of the toe, but rather just a minor setback. The other guards on the roster have done an admirable job filling in his absence. Lonzo Ball is really starting to find his groove after a rough shooting start to start the season. He's 10 for 17 from 3 over the course of his last 3 games and 15 assists in those 3 games in just 61 minutes. Craig Porter obviously was great in the road win against Miami. He's been very good as one of their depth guards this season. Good news about Darius Garland coming back. They absolutely need him at his very best for them to get to where they need to go this year. Number 6, the New York Knicks, plus 1,300 to win the title on Hard Rock Bet right now. The Orlando Magic game was an absolute disaster for the Knicks. A lot of their fears from last season came to the surface. Their offense looked stagnant and it looked bad. The Magic killed them in transition in that game, reminiscent of what happened in the Indiana Pacers series. And then to add injury to insult, Jalen Brunson sprains his ankle when the game's basically already over and he leaves in a walking boot. So obviously a bad night, but they had an incredible response against the Miami Heat. One of their best offensive games of the season. They hung a 140 in that game. How about 75 points from Karl Anthony Towns and Landry Shamet? I had a Knicks fan on playback that was lamenting that Tom Thibodeau didn't use Landry Shamet last year, kind of one of the smaller subplots in the larger subplot of Tom Thibodeau not relying on his bench very much. He's getting an extra 6 minutes per game this year, and it's paying off. He's scoring at a rate of 17 points per 36 minutes, was instrumental in the road win against Miami. But things are going to get tougher from here. Now OG Anunoby's out as well with a hamstring strain. It's going to test their depth, but this is the investment that Mike Brown has made throughout this early part of the season that should allow them a better chance to compete over that stretch of games. Number 5, the Los Angeles Lakers, currently plus 1,500 to win the title on Hard Rock Bet. Similar to Golden State, a really nice response to their humiliation at the hands of the Oklahoma City Thunder. A pair of wins against New Orleans and Milwaukee in a back-to-back. Just a wire-to-wire, absolute dominant performance against a very good Milwaukee Bucks team that had been really tough to beat at home throughout the start of this season. Luka looked completely unguardable. He saw a lot of Kyle Kuzma and Gary Harris as his primary defender in the game, torched them both, was drawing all sorts of double teams and blitzes that the Lakers were doing a good job playing quick 4-on-3 basketball out of to score points. And then the defense was locked in throughout. They did a great job getting back in transition, basically kept Milwaukee entirely out of transition in the first half, getting back, building the wall on Giannis, throwing contested three-point shooters, one of their best defensive efforts of the season. And the Lakers, by the way, are up to 14th in defensive rating on the season now. That's an excellent indicator for them. Obviously, you come up short in the measuring stick game. They have a long way to go to where they need to go if they want to compete with the best teams in the Western Conference. But again, like we talked about in the Warriors segment, a good ass kicking can be good for the soul. It can sometimes inspire you, remind you how far you are away from where you need to go, and get you more engaged in the day-to-day process of getting better. Very nice response from the Lakers. They are now 10-4. And when you look at LeBron being out for all those games and all the games that all those important role players have missed, like even Rui Hachimura being out for the Bucks game, that's a huge loss specifically for the Bucks matchup, and it didn't matter. They have, regardless of who's been in the lineup, they've played good basketball. And if you look at their upcoming schedule, they have the Jazz on Tuesday and the Jazz on Sunday. That's it until next Tuesday. So essentially a 9-game stretch or 9-day calendar day stretch where they only have 2 games. Really nice stretch for them to get LeBron involved in practice. A couple of easier games on the schedule to get LeBron game reps without having to really wear him out. You can keep him in lower minutes, and it's not a big deal in those games, right? Like really encouraging start to the season, even if you know that they're not close to their ultimate goal with the Thunder. They have a clear finish line that they're aiming for, and they look very locked in and engaged. By the way, we'll be covering their LeBron's debut on playback, depending on whether or not it'll be on Tuesday or Sunday. Whichever one of those games is LeBron's first game, we'll be covering on playback. Number 4, the Houston Rockets, currently plus 1,000 to win the title on Hard Rock Bet. We talked about them in detail in the opening segment, so I'm not going to spend too much time here. Again, if you want to hear more Rockets talk, just go to our full episode on YouTube and go back to the beginning. It was actually our first segment in the show. They're 9-1 in their last 10 games, first in offense, 8th in defense. And like we talked about earlier in the show, the Kevin Durant, Alperen Sengun duo is looking like one of the very best duos in basketball right now. And then when you combine that with a very deep roster of big, physical, athletic two-way players, it's just a great formula for winning in the modern NBA. Number 3, the Detroit Pistons, currently plus 3,000 to win the title on Hard Rock Bet. The Pistons continued their 9-game winning streak with 2 nice wins against the Sixers and Bulls, both without Cade Cunningham and Jaylen Durant. This involved the rise of Dennis Jenkins, a rise that started before Cade went out with a couple of huge clutch threes that sent the Wizards game to overtime, if you guys remember. And then in the last 2 games, he switched into a featured on-ball role against the Sixers and Bulls, where he ran a ton of pick and roll and was very efficient in doing so. A very exciting development for a team that is light on ball handling. They needed something like this. Danis in the last 3 games is averaging 20 points, 5 rebounds, and 8 assists on high efficiency in a couple of big wins for the Pistons. Really nice contributions down the roster, too, to help maintain winning when Cade and Jalen Durant have been out. Paul Reed has stepped in admirably into the Jalen Durant role. He's averaging 19 points and 11 rebounds over those 2 games. 10 total stocks over those 2 wins. And then Duncan Robinson and Karis LeVert both have stepped up on offense. Karis got off to a rough start this season, but he's been very good as of late. Duncan continuing to provide just more action relief in the half court and shot making. How about the 11-2 Detroit Pistons? Again, I talked earlier in the show about how we need another couple of teams to step up and provide a real threat to the Denver and Oklahoma City top tier. And Houston and Detroit are providing that for us to start the season. Very, very exciting. Number 2, the Denver Nuggets. 7 straight wins, and none better than an ass kicking that they delivered to the Wolves in Minnesota on Saturday night. Again, this is a team in Minnesota that's had their number over the last few years. And considering you're down 2 starters, that's a very discouraging type of situation to find yourself in on the road in Minnesota. But Tim Hardaway and Peyton Watson have both done an admirable job stepping into starting roles. Tim Hardaway just continues to look like a perfect fit with this team. His aggression and his ability to knock shots down has just been a godsend for this offense. Peyton Watson has just been a do-everything athlete for them. Good news on the injury front, too, with Cam Johnson, just a bicep strain. So, not the more severe injuries that were kind of floating around as possibilities for Cam. So that's good news. Bad news is, though, a pretty substantial foot injury for Christian Braun that's going to keep him out for at least 6 weeks. So good for Cam, because I think Cam needs to build rhythm, and I think the last thing he needs right now is to be out of the lineup for a little bit. But this is where the depth is going to be tested. This is where all that investment in the offseason into depth should be able to help this team. By the way, in that Minnesota game, yet another performance this year. We talked about how statistically the Nuggets without Jokic on the floor hadn't been that great. Statistically, better than previous years for sure, but not that great. I think coming into the Minnesota game, they were like -7 points per 100 possessions with Jokic off the floor. That number has been like 11 and 12 in previous seasons, so certainly better. But one of the things I talked about was the way it's manifesting is in good games. They've had multiple games this year where they were able to blow games open with their bench group, where they were able to grow the lead rather than lose the lead with their bench group. Just recently with Sacramento, right? Fourth quarter unit comes out there and blows the game open before Jokic even has to come onto the floor. This game, yet another example of a very strong performance for the Nuggets with Jokic off the floor. A lot of encouraging trends for Denver. None probably as encouraging as their defense, though. They locked Minnesota up in the second half on Saturday. They are number 2 in defensive rating. They were started the season up high, and they've maintained that. Still number 2 in defensive rating to start the season. Just completely locked in and on a string. Very clearly committed to their ultimate goals this season. And then Nikola Jokic, playing like the best player in the world. His last 7 games, 35 points, 12 rebounds, and 11 assists. 71% from the field and 55% from 3. 2.6 stocks per game as well over that span. Really encouraging start for the Denver Nuggets. Number 1, as they've been through every single power rankings video we've done to start this season, the Oklahoma City Thunder, currently plus 200 to win the title on Hard Rock Bet. Hard to have a better week than Oklahoma City just did. How about taking 2 of the largest fan bases, 2 fan bases that have been very optimistic coming into the season for what they can accomplish, and just taking out the measuring stick and just beating the shit out of them for the entire world to see in the middle of last week. Just an unbelievable performance, dominating 2 of the great NBA franchises on back-to-back nights. 2 teams that have pretty resilient offenses too, led by 2 of the league's best offensive engines, and they just completely shut both of them down to the point where both stars looked bad and both teams looked absolutely helpless to score the basketball, as what is clearly the best defense of this era just continues adding names to the list of dominance. And the continuation of their offensive leap has been fun to watch. Sharp transition attacks off of misses and turnovers, good ball and player movement in the half court, excellent advantage creation from Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and AJ Mitchell. And then Chet Holmgren's offensive leap has been a sight to behold. He's averaging 19 points per game on 70% true shooting this year. Excellent 3-point shooting, quick little matchup hunting in the mid to short range with little bits of shot making and step throughs. Awesome work out of the dunker spot where he seemingly dunks everything. Just an awesome offensive start from Chet Holmgren. They've looked like the best team in basketball to start the season. All right, guys, that's all I have for today. As always, I sincerely appreciate you guys for supporting us and supporting the show. We'll be back tomorrow morning with some game reaction. I will see you guys then.